Every single night, your brain creates a world that feels completely, utterly real. You see faces, you hear conversations, you explore these complex, vivid environments, all while you're just lying there completely still in a dark room. But what is actually happening inside your brain while you are dreaming? Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to dive deep into the fascinating science of human consciousness. We're asking the big question: what happens inside your brain when you dream? Let's get into it. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the active sleeping brain, move into defining REM and non-REM sleep, explore something very cool called the posterior hot zone, look at memory, learning, and mood, and finally, separate myths from measurable science. All right, first up, the active sleeping brain. So a lot of people tend to think that going to sleep is kind of like turning off a computer, that your brain just simply powers down for the night. But the scientific reality, it's entirely different. Your brain literally never completely stops. When you sleep, you actually cycle through different phases, with a full cycle starting over every 80 to 100 minutes. And you usually go through about 4 to 6 of these cycles every single night. We start with non-REM, or NREM sleep, which has 3 distinct stages. Stage 1 is just that brief, fleeting transition between being awake and asleep, where your heartbeat and breathing start to slow down. Then, in Stage 2, you're in a light sleep. Your brain waves slow down and your body temperature lowers. After that, you drop into Stage 3. This is deep, slow-wave sleep, where your heartbeat and breathing drop to their absolute lowest levels. And finally, you move into the highly active REM stage. So as you move through this cycle, your brain activity is progressively changing, shifting from this deep physical restoration to intense, high-gear mental energy. Which brings us to part 2, defining REM and NREM sleep. Okay, so how do these phases actually show up physically? Let's look at the incredible paradox of REM sleep. REM stands for rapid eye movement. When you hit this phase, which is usually about 90 minutes after you initially fall asleep, your eyes are closed, right? But they are darting back and forth rapidly behind your eyelids. Your breathing gets fast, it gets irregular, and your brain and body are just incredibly energized. In fact, if we measure brain activity during REM sleep, it is strikingly similar to your brain's activity when you are wide awake, but to protect you, your brain actually sends signals to your spinal cord to temporarily shut off your movement. It literally creates a temporary paralysis in your arms and legs. Why? So that you don't physically act out all those vivid, wild experiences happening in your mind. Now, for a really long time, there was this traditional belief in science that dreaming belonged exclusively to REM sleep. Like, that was the only time it happened. But EEG monitoring, which tracks the electrical signals in your brain, has totally flipped that idea on its head. It turns out conscious experiences actually occurred during both non-REM and REM sleep. NREM sleep isn't just this blank, dreamless void. Your brain can actually generate conscious experiences during multiple stages of the sleep cycle. Now, the characteristics, the frequency, and the vividness of those dreams will definitely differ depending on the stage. REM dreams, for example, they're generally the most vivid, story-like, and highly emotional, but they definitely aren't the only ones. Moving right along into part 3, the posterior hot zone. This is where things get really sci-fi. Modern neuroscience is literally mapping the origin of dreams inside the physical brain right now. A major study led at the University of Wisconsin-Madison discovered what they actually call a posterior hot zone. It's located in the parieto-occipital region of the cerebral cortex, so basically toward the back of your brain. By closely monitoring patients in a sleep lab using EEGs, they found something amazing. A specific drop in low-frequency electrical activity in this hot zone perfectly correlates with dreaming. And it gets even better. When they saw increases in high-frequency activity in those exact same regions, it correlated with specific types of dream content, like recognizing faces or hearing speech in the dream. So literally, just by watching this specific pattern of electrical brain activity, scientists could predict in real time whether a sleeping person was currently dreaming. And that worked regardless of whether they were in REM or NREM sleep. How crazy is that? Let's transition to part 4, memory, learning, and mood. So we know where dreaming is happening, and we know how to measure it. But that brings up a massive biological question, doesn't it? Why does the brain work so incredibly hard while we are supposed to be resting? Well, during deep NREM sleep, that's stage 3 we talked about earlier, your body is focused on physical restoration. Blood supply to your muscles increases, tissue grows and repairs, hormones are released. It's basically the body's repair shop. But during REM sleep, the focus totally shifts to cognitive and emotional maintenance. A prominent hypothesis right now is that REM sleep stimulates the regions of the cerebral cortex responsible for learning, thinking, and organizing information. It's thought to be deeply involved in storing your memories, processing everything you've learned that day, and even balancing your overall mood. So there is a deep, measurable link between sleep and memory. But this raises a really fascinating question. If our dreams feel so incredibly real, why on earth do we forget them so quickly when we wake up? Well, while sleep definitely helps organize new information, research suggests your brain might also actively be helping you forget certain dream information. According to the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke, the 90s, studies on animal models, specifically mice, have shown that certain brain cells active during REM sleep might actually promote the forgetting of dreams. Now, we have to be careful here, right? We can't present mouse research as direct 100% proof of how the human brain behaves, but it definitely provides a really compelling hypothesis for why our vivid nighttime realities just seem to vanish by morning. All right, on to our final section, part 5, myths versus measurable science. Because dreams can be so strange and intensely emotional, they've been the subject of human fascination for, well, thousands of years. But we need to be impartial and definitive here. Based on actual neuroscientific research, there is absolutely no evidence that ordinary dreams predict the future. None. Furthermore, science has not established that every dream contains a specific, universal hidden meaning or some deep symbolic message. When we talk about the science of dreaming, we have to keep our focus strictly on measurable brain processes. So you might be asking, why are dreams so strange if they aren't supernatural messages? Well, it's actually your cerebral cortex combining familiar fragments of your life into completely new conscious experiences. The measurable elements of dreams are simply images, sounds, emotions, memories, characters, and settings. The real awe of this process is how your brain literally stitches these everyday fragments together into these highly unusual or seemingly totally random narratives. And they feel entirely real to you in the moment because the specific regions of your brain responsible for processing sensory experiences and emotions, they are highly active. But they're operating without the logical filtering of your normal waking mind. But even with all of this incredible data, we have to humbly acknowledge the boundaries of current science. As the National Institute of Child Health and Human Development very clearly states, scientists aren't sure why we dream. While we know for sure that sleep is absolutely essential for memory and learning, and while we can literally map the hot zones of electrical activity as you dream, the exact evolutionary purpose behind generating these vivid internal realities, it remains an unresolved hypothesis. Some signals sent to the cortex seem super important for organizing information, while others just seem, quite frankly, completely random. Which brings us to the most profound mystery of all. Think about it. If your body is temporarily paralyzed, your eyes are closed, and you are entirely disconnected from the external world, how can a rich, vivid state of consciousness exist while your body is asleep? The science we've covered in this explainer maps out the how, the frequencies and the hot zones. But the sheer power of your mind to generate a completely convincing reality entirely from within, that remains one of the greatest wonders of human biology. So keep wondering and keep exploring that incredible machine inside your head. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.